Yeah, so you've brought it there. So let's start there. Juventus, they played Napoli last night in the Coppa Italia, the first leg of the semi-final, and they went 1-0 down, which I think was the first time Napoli had ever taken the lead at the new Juventus stadium. But in typical Juventus fashion, the Bianconeri came back and they won 3-1. Luca, we'll go straight to you for this one. There was a bit of fallout after the game. So do you want to fill people in on what happened here?
Well, it was kind of. It seemed as though Napoli were going to sort of retreat into a press silence and just not say anything after they had two penalties given against them, and then one of those was immediately after they had a shout of their own for the final goal. And then it just sort of got a bit bizarre, really, where they decided to take a pop at Rai Sport to broadcast the cup games in Italy, saying that if you were watching on Rai, you should turn the volume down, as the commentary in their view was somehow so biased towards Juventus. Now it was just addressing all the issues to do with the penalties. And then Reina, who gave away the final penalty and who sort of had been playing well and then was also responsible for the first goal. He sort of went walkabout under a high ball. He was one of the players interviewed, and he just said that it was never a penalty. He came out, won the ball, which on replays you do see there's a bit of a connection. I think you could argue it was a penalty, as he sort of gets such a light connection that it can still be seen as a foul. He's not really changed the direction the ball's travelling in. He just said that in the end it was completely decided by the referees, and then even in the following day there's been further fallout. I think the editor of one of the main media companies in Italy, he's a Roma fan, but he also started to have a go at Juventus, as people want to do. He said that he also had a go at Atalanta, like Connor, saying that they basically just roll over for Juventus and try against their rivals. And yeah, it's just this kind of standard just prophecies about referees. And there were poor decisions, perhaps, and there were poor decisions in other games which got far less comment, but it's just the same old. And in some ways it's quite entertaining. It's just that everyone's going mad and losing their heads, but it probably doesn't really do the reputation of Italian football much good.
No, it's not like Napoli to take it out on the press after they've been disappointed with a result or a refereeing decision. But we tend not to talk too much about refereeing decisions. I'm not particularly that bothered by them, but it's kind of hard not to in this game because there was such a backlash afterwards. So, Nick, I'll throw it over to you. What did you think of the referee's performance on the night, particularly with the second penalty for Juve?
Generally speaking, I thought the referee yesterday was awful. I don't think it was up to the standard it should be. And to be honest, the refereeing across Italy the last few weeks has been pretty atrocious. So, it's not just this game. But speaking of this game in itself, I thought, as Luca kind of touched on that second penalty to Juve, in that, it could still be, viewed as a penalty. But I look at that and, I know a lot of people have been quoting the rules and all that, but I'm just looking at it and I'm thinking that two players, irrespective of him being a goalkeeper, Reina, they've gone in for a challenge. Reina's got there first. Yes, he hasn't got the best touch on it, but he's got there first. He's won the challenge. And yet, I just think, what is he supposed to do in that position? Just completely disappear? Like, to me, it just doesn't seem fair that that's a penalty. It doesn't make sense to me. I just don't understand what the keeper's supposed to do in that
Can
position.
I'm just going to play devil's advocate for a minute here. If a defender made a similar tackle, obviously not with his arms, but played the ball in that position and then followed through and cleared out a defender or a striker like that, it's a penalty, no?
If they both come in as a 50-50 challenge together and they've taken each other out, is that a penalty?
I'm not so sure, but in this,
I only think
to the side, so there is still a goal-scoring opportunity there. But because, was it Higuain who went through? Because he's cleared out, it's not a goal-scoring opportunity. So
yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's favoured the striker purely because Reina is a goalkeeper, and in that situation, when Reina's gone low and the attacker's on his feet, of course the attacker's going to end up going to ground. If that was two players meeting a ball 50-50, then there'd be a collision, and then they'd both probably go backwards. Like I feel like it's hugely disadvantages the keeper there, and I just don't know what he's supposed to do in that position. So and I do appreciate that the rules might possibly say otherwise, but I just think it's so unfair and so harsh for Napoli. And given that obviously the LBL penalty, which wasn't given, look, the whole backlash from it, I can understand from a Napoli point of view. And actually, I watched the game with Caterina, who's some of the FIF TV people might have seen in a video, and she actually sent me this for the pod just to read out. So basically, her summing up her feelings of the match. And this, a respectable journalist, but as a Napoli fan, you can see the passion and the anger that comes from this. So this is what she said. Despite some mistakes in defense, Napoli played well in the first half. However, the decisions made by the referee were shameful and damaging to all Italian football. It is unacceptable and frustrating to see what happened, especially on the decision to give the second penalty. But we are talking about Juventus, and probably we will see the same story in the future. We as supporters are furious, but from today, Napoli should only be focused to improve from their mistakes made on the pitch and be ready for Saturday's match against Roma. And she finishes with some choice words about Juve, which I won't read out. But I mean, to that, I think that anger is fine. I think to say to a supporter base, don't be angry about something. I think that's like saying don't be passionate about your team. So I can take that. Possibly the players and some of the stuff that was being tweeted out by like Tonelli and stuff, probably not needed from a professional point of view. But I do agree that, look, I think they have a right to be angry, frustrated, but as Katerina said, I think they do really need to move on. And from that perspective, it is, I guess, frustrating from a neutral point of view that once again, in such a major competition, we're talking about everything but the match, the football played, I guess. So it's, a little frustrating on that point of view.
I'm inclined to agree about the second penalty they got. I personally wouldn't have given it. I do think Reina came out and played the ball, and I was nearly screaming that at the television because Sky's co-commentator, I can't remember who it was probably Gary Birtles, because he tends to be drawn out for these games, but they showed the replay like 4 or 5 times and he couldn't spot that there was a touch, and I'm screaming at the television like Reina played the ball. But down the other end, I don't think Napoli have too much to appeal. I don't think that was a penalty. I think he threw himself on the ground, and there's a lot of this. I'm not a Juventus fan, but there are a lot of
these. So you say?
Yeah, I do say. For those watching, there we go. But a lot of these, the backlash that comes in games like this, is it just because it's Juventus? And I know that they do tend to get decisions, but the statistics do prove that they haven't got as many penalties this season as Roma and probably a couple of other teams. But if this was, say, I don't know, Napoli played Bologna, and would there be such a backlash about the referee, or is it just because there's this hatred of Juventus that's already almost instilled in people's blood when they follow Italian football? So if it wasn't Juve, it wouldn't be a big deal, right?
Yeah, I think it just fits into people's sort of grand narrative of how it is supposed to be. It is like a sort of positive reinforcement of what people already believe in. I think someone, like, obviously the day after, someone had a bit of time and they tallied up all the penalties given for and against teams over the last 5 years, and I think Juventus were about third. I think Milan were top. But then even in some of the other games, like Sampdoria had a sort of dodgy penalty given against them where Berezinski went in to head the ball and the Palermo forward came in with a high foot and it was given as a penalty. And I still don't understand why Lazio were given a penalty against Udinese. I think it was for handball, but it seemed like really not easy to tell what that was for. But like the sort of disparity in how much those decisions have been talking about compared to these in the cup is just on a different level. When like the second one, I said I think it wasn't a penalty. I can see why perhaps it was given, but it's just the reaction is so different. And then so much more public, and then like people just start reacting to what other people have said, and it will just sort of feeds into itself and just carries on.
It turns into that typical everybody against Juventus argument that you see on Italian football forums online all the time. It's just the same stuff. But we're going to move away from this because I'm sick of talking about referees. As I said, don't really like talking about it, but it did need to be discussed because, as you said, Nick, the performance was particularly bad.